risk out of North Korea for Asian equities and investors?
I think certainly we're all coming to grips with the modus operandi, if you like, of the third in the lineage of Kim leaders of North Korea. Very hard to know exactly what is going on there. I can't help but think, though, that this is probably most likely a replay of periodic episodes that we've seen through the last sort of decade or two. Saber rattling, possibly a domestic political agenda that this also plays into, and I guess extracting concessions from trading partners or partners such as South Korea and indeed the US. So my take is that it's unlikely to escalate into something more dramatic.
Do you think this is a storm that will pass?
To be honest, I think that is the most likely outcome. I guess to sum it up, it's a small probability or small likelihood of a very significant event unfolding, and so it's very hard to position around that. But I do think the most likely outcome is that it's a storm which passes.
China trade data just came out and we saw a deficit. What does it signal of global recovery and monetary policy focus in China?
I think you want to be cautious over analysing these data. The market's quite comfortable with the idea that the January-February period has a few distortions because of the changing Lunar New Year, and I think that's flowed into March this time. So of course we saw imports quite weak in February. That was the Lunar New Year effect there, and we've seen a bounce back in March, and that's been the main factor which has pushed the trade accounts into that small deficit. I think we need to see another month's data just to get a firmer take on the trend. But I guess what we can say is that rebalancing is occurring. China's external surplus is shrinking. But I think a month or two's time, we'll look back, we'll see that it's still in a reasonably robust surplus.
With Japan's massive stimulus, will this be a game changer for the country? Does it steal the thunder away from China or add to the wider competition between Asia's two largest economies?
I think it does add to the competitive dynamic, if you like, around the region. But in terms of that, does it put China slightly in the shade? I think perhaps the more interesting question is, does it put the US slightly in the shade? Because for the last couple of years now, since 2009, we've seen Ben Bernanke wheel out his policy bazookas, so-called QE1, 2, 3, Operation Twist extended, rolled into QE3 example. And the US dollar now on a trade-weighted basis is right where it was in 2009 when QE1 was introduced. So there's been no discernible impact on the currency from all these monetary machinations in the US. And suddenly we look across to Japan and we see that they've indeed have pulled out a bazooka and had quite a significant impact on the yen. And I think that's really the more interesting element out of this, why the BOJ has been successful when the Fed really hasn't.
What impact will the weakening yen have on South Korea's competitiveness?
Clearly, they are in competition, I think, is the bigger force there. They're slightly complementary, but I think competition is the bigger force. And interesting, if you look to the Korean won, it has weakened recently, and it's weakened because of the yen weakness, I think, and clearly because of these tensions on the peninsula. I think the tensions blow over. That's the most likely outcome, I think. But when they blow over, or indeed if they blow over, I don't think we're going to see much of a reversal in the Korean won, and that's because of this competitive force from Japan, from the weaker yen. I think the Korean won, will stay weaker even after these peninsular tensions pass.
Which currency pair provide the best returns under the weakening yen?
If you think about the competitive force between Japan and Korea, Japan and Taiwan as well, and to an extent Singapore, and of course Singapore's got the trade-weighted mechanism, with the dollar moving higher against the yen, I think the dollar probably moves higher against the Taiwan dollar, the Singapore dollar as well. So I think the dollar is really the play there. Southeast Asia, we're seeing a slightly different dynamic, and the Thai baht, for example, is quite firm. I think that probably continues, although not dramatically further from where we are. The Malaysian ringgit as well. So there is a north-south dichotomy panning out as a result of this yen weakness.